Good morning, friends. We'll begin today with a chant, Lord, when in darkness. Today we're going to talk about the spiritual principle of truthfulness. And in talking about truthfulness, this chant came to mind because truthfulness is a spiritual quality that each one of us can hold and practice and adhere to in our lives. And these spiritual principles and spiritual qualities that we have, they're pole stars. For those moments when we get lost in our delusion, when we get lost in our emotions. And Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. It's a cry, a battle cry toward to the divine in any of those moments when we're feeling lost, confused, when the veil of ignorance is blinding our sight and our vision. And truthfulness is one of those principles, is a spiritual quality that we're calling out to. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. It's that pole star helping us to reach greater attunement with the divine, helping us to reach those places of honesty, of introspection, of integrity that we'll talk about today. So I invite you to join me in this chant. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort eternal friend. Let's begin with a prayer. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, humbly we bow at thy feet. Help us to cut through the veil of delusion with thy sword of truthfulness, that we may transcend our ego consciousness, living in bliss with thee, sharing thy joy with all. Om. Peace. Amen. When I first thought about this topic of truthfulness, just going to grab my water, take a sip. I first thought about this topic of truthfulness because it is a thread that has been pulled through my life recently with just a few situations and circumstances that have come up as they do, just perfectly designed for our learning and for our own spiritual growth. And it was presented to me by a friend a few weeks ago, just this question of, are you being truthful with yourself? Are you being honest about the situations and the circumstances? And it gave me pause to consider, because I'm not somebody who is inherently untruthful. I often consider myself to be examining situations and circumstances with a thoughtful eye, with an honest eye, introspecting on circumstances and feelings and my own emotions, and trying to relate to things from that place of truthfulness. This is a spiritual quality, a spiritual foundation for each one of us. There's a story that Swami Ananda tells in his book of lessons, Right Action for Achieving Success and Happiness. He tells the story about being in the hospital, and the doctor that was treating him, this was when he was in India, recognized him as a sadhu, as a spiritual being, and asked him at the end. He said, I have so many responsibilities in the world. I have children who need to go to school, and a wife who I need to take care of, and so many things in the material world. Those weren't the words he was using, but essentially saying there's so many things in the material world that I need to do and I need to take care of. And how can I be successful without cutting some corners, without being a little dishonest, without sort of kind of wiggling my way in and out of certain things? And Swami Kriyananda's response to him was to say, for himself and his own experience, I found that when I have adhered to truthfulness, when I've adhered to Dharma, everything that I need comes to me. Everything that I need works out in the way that it's supposed to. And it's such a grounding foundation. It's this idea of we have to adhere to our spiritual principles, and truthfulness is at the foundation of that. Because if we begin to just flirt with the concept of dishonesty, if we begin to just get a little bit lax in, and there are two ways, I'm going to come back and finish that thought, but, just to split this, there are two ways to look at dishonesty and truthfulness. And what I have found for myself in the past few weeks, the ability to do. It's interesting, last week, this was the topic that I wanted to discuss with all of you, but then I was having some sound issues, and by the time I could fix them, it was we were in the lineup for the next satsang to start, so I decided to just stop and hold off, and I said, I'll just talk about truthfulness next week, which would be today. And over the course of the week, this theme has just continued to pull itself and through my life, to kind of weave itself in and out of my life. And I thought this morning, the sound didn't work because I wasn't quite ready to talk about it yet. I was supposed to talk about it with all of you today and not last week. I hadn't quite pulled that thread all the way through of what truthfulness means. Not to say that I'm fully there yet, but I've had a little more time to introspect and have insights into it. And what I considered when I was when we're talking about truthfulness is there are two roads that we can take. There's the passive road, and then there's the active road. And there are ways that we can twist reality in a conscious or active, that's what I mean by active, with the intent to kind of twist reality or kind of wiggle our way in. And that's not quite what I want to sit with and talk about today, because most of us, and especially those of us that are tuning into a spiritual satsang like this, we know when we're acting wrongly. We know when we're kind of fibbing or wiggling the truth a little bit, and we know what is right. We know where our spiritual principles lie. And in those moments, we have to just look at ourselves with honesty and try and act rightly, to rely on those principles and to lean into those principles, as Swami Kriyananda says to this doctor who's saying, how can I move through the material world without cutting corners? How can I move through the material world being perfectly dharmic and honest, or at least attempting to try and be as dharmic and honest as I can? Don't I need to be cutting corners in order to be successful, to share my success with my children who want to go to school, and on and on? And this is what he was saying. And Swami Kriyananda was steadfast. No, we adhere to our principles, because I have found, in his experience, Swami Kriyananda's words, I have found that when I adhere to principles, I get everything that I need. We have the faith to lean into that and to rely on that, then we have the opportunity to be truthful. We don't need to cut corners, because we have faith. I go forth in perfect faith. The power of the omnipresent good to give me what I need at the time that I need it. One of Swami Kriyananda's affirmations. And if we're really leaning into that faith, then truthfulness is our only option, because we know that adhering to that principle, adhering to that dharma, that what will come to us is exactly what we need. What I have experienced, and the side of truthfulness and integrity and introspection that I would like to talk about today, is really the other side of that, which is when we don't quite recognize that we're being dishonest, when we're reflecting on our own emotional experience about something, or when we're looking at something, but there's a veil of delusion that's just been put over us in one form or another, in different levels of thickness. It's not, but it's this idea, and this is the experience that I had when I was talking with my friend, who just presented the question to me, not in an accusatory way, but saying, are you being truthful? And it stopped me, and it gave me pause, because I realized I didn't know. I thought I was being truthful. And I have had 2 weeks now to really sit with that and look at that and examine it for myself and introspect. And so truthfulness and introspection, they're woven together. And that opportunity, Swami Kriyananda was once asked, what is the best yoga pose, meaning Hatha yoga, that a yogi can do? And his response was standing on your own 2 feet. What does that mean? He doesn't mean literally standing in Tadasana, mountain pose, though that is a lovely pose to do. But what he was expressing through that is our ability to stand exactly where we are, with to do the introspection, to know how we feel in each moment. If we're angry, be angry in that moment. It doesn't mean just cast your anger out. Oh, I'm angry, whatever, this is where I need to stay. We're always working with our energy and trying to raise our energy and shift our consciousness, but we have to stand where we are. Everyone's spiritual path has to start exactly where they are. And we can't take anybody else's path. We must be honest and truthful with ourselves and what our next step is. In the place on the climb, if we're all climbing up the mountain, where am I standing? And maybe I can see my friend and he's all the way up there. And me just willing myself there and just pretending that I'm up there next to him isn't going to do anything. I need to take one step after another. And I have to climb my way up. And each one of us is doing that. We have to stand on our own 2 feet right where we are. And the power of introspection, I was thinking about the Mahabharata and Sanjaya, who is symbolically representing the power of introspection and divine sight. And he is explaining this battle to the blind king. Each one of us, we have a blind king and we have a Sanjaya inside of us. And there's always that battle in the battlefield of life, just like the Mahabharata, that's pulling us in from one extreme to another. And Sanjaya, when he pairs with the blind king, when he pairs with that ability to cut through the delusion, then we begin to see the battle unravel. And that's what happens for each one of us. It's not about waking up every morning and saying, I need to do better, or let me just skip ahead 2, 3, 4, 10 steps, whatever it may be. It's waking up and with Sanjaya, explaining to the blind king within each one of us, with that introspection, sitting down and saying, this is where the battle is today. These are the battles. These are the little battles that we've won. These are the little battles that we've lost. This is where we are overall each day. And to stand in that and to say, I don't need to be anywhere else, because I have to build my foundation from right here, from right in this moment. I was thinking about truthfulness as like a trampoline. And when you start jumping on a trampoline, you have a little bit of momentum, but the more you jump and the more you work with it, the higher you can go. The more you can soar, the higher that you can fly. And this is the power that we have in practicing every morning, waking up and saying, Sanjaya, let's explain to the blind king, where are we today? How do we feel in this moment? How can I be truthful, sincere, honest? How can I have integrity in my spiritual path? And integrity means being able to stand on my own 2 feet, just as Swami Kriyananda recommends to us. When Swami Kriyananda was talking about integrity, what he called integrity self-integration, and he said it's wholeness in oneself. And I thought that was such a beautiful definition of what integrity means. Self-integration. It's not suppression, it's not confusion, it's not manipulation or fibbing or any of these things. It's self-integration. So we collect into our basket everything we have to carry today, and we integrate that in. We integrate that into our experience. This is where I'm standing. Sanjaya, what's happening today? How can I stand here? Because the truth, I called this talk, The Truth Can Set You Free, which of course is a Bible quote. And it came to me, that's the first thing that I thought of, the truth can set you free. And then the next thought that came into my mind immediately after that was the phrase that we hear all the time, the burden of truth. Truth is something that it is pulling us in all these different directions. It can be difficult to have to hold that mirror up to ourselves. But this is what the Guru does. He holds the mirror up for us. And he stands and he waits. And he says, look, this is where you are. But look, I'm standing right beside you, and we're walking this path together. And that's the power of truthfulness, like the trampoline. If we take just little tiny jumps, then we're not going to soar very high off the ground. But if we give our full faith, our full energy, our full effort into that process, and we, with all of our strength and will, lean into that truthfulness, lean into the integrity, the introspection, take an honest look at ourselves and where we're standing each day. Describe the battle to the blind king each morning with truth and integrity, self-integration. I'm a little bit angry today. I'm irked about that email that I read last night. I'm not going to take it out on that person because I know where that person is and where I am, and that this is just a little blip in the road, and everything that he has going on and everything I have going on have created a perfect little clash of odds. But I woke up irked. I'm angry. And standing in that moment, owning that, acknowledging that, and being able to take the next step forward. This is what helps us to build a spiritual foundation. My friend that I was talking with described a story that I'd heard many times but had sort of forgotten about until she shared it with me again. And she was using it again as this concept that truthfulness is a foundation that we can build, and without our foundation, everything else just begins to slip away. It's like the foundation of a house. If it's not built properly, it might not be today and might not be tomorrow, but over time, slowly, that house is going to, that crack in the foundation will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually the house will collapse. I love watching home improvement shows. Like when I get a time to have a little break, I love to watch people who knock down houses and rebuild them. And I was just watching one a few weeks ago, and that's what they were doing. They were working on the foundation, and the foundation was really bad, and they knew the house was going to collapse. That was the point. And they just kind of poked the wound a little bit, poked that little spot, and the whole house just collapsed in. That can happen for us if we don't stand in our own truth, if we don't stand on that own foundation, on our own foundation. And the story that my friend reminded me of was, I don't know who the person is, but a man who built a home on the hill just behind Crystal Hermitage, just behind where Swami Kriyananda lives, for those of you that have been there. It's beautiful. Been up to the Crystal Hermitage in Ananda village. It's overlooking the Yuba River. And it's a beautiful place. So this man built a home there, but he didn't build the foundation properly. And one day the whole home just went tumbling down the hill and into the river. And, she was using that example as a metaphor for what can happen to us when we don't stand in our own truth, when we're not standing on our own 2 feet right here in this moment. And that is the opportunity that each one of us has. And it's not always easy. It's not always simple. I was thinking about that even for myself. Obviously, I had a friend who kind of held the mirror up for me to ask the question, are you being truthful? And that has led to the introspection for me to say yes or no in different ways. But what happens for us when we're caught in those little ritties of delusion and we can't quite see that we're not being honest, we're not intending to be dishonest, but we just aren't seeing the truth? How do we get ourselves out of those states? What can we do? Of course, everything comes back to our techniques, comes back to the practices of meditation that Paramahansa Yogananda has given us. Last night I was reading, I guess it was last Tuesday night, I was reading about the Hindu god Satya Narayana, who is a manifestation or an incarnation of Vishnu energy. Vishnu is that sustaining. We have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Vishnu is the sustainer. It felt so appropriate to me that truthfulness, Satya meaning truthfulness, so Satya Narayana, that incarnation of that sustaining energy. Truthfulness is something that sustains us because, again, it builds that platform, that foundation upon which we can start to grow. Truthfulness is the jump that we're putting into the trampoline that bounces back and echoes. No matter however much energy I put down, it gives me that much energy back. It helps to sustain and to balance. So if I'm jumping with all of my might, I'm going to soar much higher than if I'm just giving a little hiccup here or there on a trampoline. So truthfulness, it has the ability to do the work for us, to help us to soar, to meet us where we are, just like that trampoline, if we're willing to put that first burst of energy into it. The foundation of the house will stand strongly on the hill if we build the solid foundation, but if we don't, it goes tumbling down into the river. What a perfect metaphor for this spiritual principle and standing on our own 2 feet. So what does this mean for us? How do we release the veil, or how do we, just trying to find a more appropriate word than drop, but drop the veil of delusion, to pull back the curtain of delusion. And in all of the stories that I read with Satya Narayana, this incarnation of Vishnu, Satya meaning truth, there were just a number of stories about stories from different people who wanted something in their life. They needed something. The stories all begin that if you pray to Satya Narayana, he will bring you blessings of success in whatever form you're asking on the material plane. So there was a story of a man who wanted his daughter to find the perfect husband, and there was a story of a man who wanted his farm to grow, to be prosperous and to grow beautiful vegetables. And in each of these examples, they prayed to Satya Narayana, and the prayer and the way that you offer and that you invoke that presence of Satya Narayana is first you fast and then you offer a puja. And I was thinking about and relating that back to our path and to our techniques. And in so many ways, it felt like what we're doing with our Hung Sa technique and certainly with our Kriya technique. The fast is the cleanse. Why do we fast? We fast to cleanse the body, to cleanse the heart and the mind. So the fast is the cleanse. We're pulling and drawing energy up through our astral spine in a cleansing, in an offering of to cleanse all of those little vrittis and emotions and delusions that hold us and keep us bound. And then what do? We offer that up into the divine at the end of our meditation. We sit in self-offering. So we fast and cleanse with each breath, and then we offer ourselves in. And what comes back to us are those blessings, the blessings of success, the blessings of joy, the blessings of the presence of the divine in every single moment. So consider every breath that you take a sacred offering into the divine, sitting in introspection, reflecting on our lives in every moment, saying to the divine each morning in our meditations, where am I standing today? What do I need to do to help me to grow closer to you, to know you more completely, to be attuned to you more fully? And in each breath that we take, offering the cleansing energy, pulling all of our energy up into the divine, and at the point between the eyebrows, offering ourselves there. The fast and the puja. The fast and the puja. This is what brings the presence of Satyanarayana. And we have that ability to invoke these qualities of truthfulness, to sit in introspection, to ask each day, Sanjaya, to explain to the blind king within us, where are we? How are we doing on the battlefield today? And it comes back to the breath, comes back to our meditations in each moment. Go within, and there we will build our foundation, brick by brick. There we will jump on our trampoline, moment by moment, joyful jump after joyful jump, until we're all soaring. God bless you.